Everybody, welcome back to October Sky, Chapter 7, Part 2. Over the next week, Odell gathered the pop bottles. There were always plenty of them in the garbage. Quint and I mixed up a variety of black powder samples. We began our excursion up to Pine Knob the following Saturday, each of us carrying a bag full of bottles filled with different mixtures. We had to first climb Water Tank Mountain, so called because the two cylindrical steel water tanks on top held cold-blooded drinking water. Once we'd reached the tanks, we'd go down the back side of it and then climb up a gully that reached Pine Knob's bald top. Somebody had clear-cut the top of the mountain more than a decade ago, and the forest still hadn't recovered. There was just a sea of ugly stumps and barren, eroded dirt. After Quentin got through complaining how much his feet hurt and how tired he was, we set up and began our test, blowing the bottles to smithereens one by one. While we hid behind the stumps, Sherman took notes. Quentin kept grumbling on about our scientific approach. In truth, the tests were subjective at best, one exploding bottle difficult to compare to another. I had ground the powder especially fine for the last bottle we exploded. However, when it went off, it blew a crater a foot deep. Even Quentin was impressed. "That's the way I'll mix it and grind it for our next rocket," I told him. He was mollified. We had accomplished something nearly scientific after all. The finer the powder, the bigger the explosion. Despite the fact that we were off company property, we would later hear some people in Colwood were still very unhappy with what we were doing. It seemed like everybody, or every time we blew a bottle, somebody thought the mine had blown up. They'd come out on their back porches in a panic, but then somebody else would say, "No, it's those damn rocket boys." Then everybody would go back inside until we blew another bottle. And the same thing would happen all over again. When I returned, Mom and Dad had gotten phone calls about the noise, including one from Mr. Van Dyke. Surprisingly, Dad didn't say anything to me about it. I was off company property, so perhaps he felt I had followed his orders, at least to an extent that satisfied him. But I still had a problem. Pine Knob was okay to blow up bottles, but it was impractical for a rocket range. The BCMA needed more than anything else a place of its own nearby where we could launch our rockets without anybody complaining. But where would we find such a place? As it turns out, that particular decision was about to be taken out of my hands. At Colwood Women's Club meeting on Thursday evening, the Great Six met with Mom and Mrs. Van Dyke and gave them unsolicited advice on the whole matter of us rocket boys. Mom woke me up the next morning when it was still dark outside. "Come on, we're going to go talk to your father." Blurry-eyed and confused, I followed her to the kitchen. Dad almost dropped his coffee mug when we appeared. It was a rare thing for Mom to be up that early, and he had never seen me before sunrise, ever. "Damn, Elsie, don't sneak up on me like that," he said. Sonny and I need to talk to you, Mom said. Dad eyed me and sagged in his chair. "Let's hear it." Dad eyed me and I wanted to figure out how he can launch his rockets without anybody getting upset. "Why would we do that?" "Because there's some people in this town who think these boys could be trying to do something good." Although I didn't have a clue, Dad, of course, already knew what Mom was talking about, however. "Those damn big old biddy school teachers think they have to do is snap their fingers and get their way in this town." He gulped down the last drink of coffee. Sorry, This comes from Higher Than Me. Van Dyke says no more rockets. You'll come to regret this, Homer, Mom said icily. She wrapped her coat around her and stalked out of the kitchen. I was left alone, standing at attention before Dad, who fully acknowledged my presence. Do you see all the trouble you've caused? He demanded. I was confused about exactly what trouble he had in mind. After all, I hadn't fired any rockets since his last order stop. I did, however, have his complete attention, a rare occurrence. Dad, is Coalwood going to be torn down? He looked at me as if I were out of my mind. What are you talking about? I heard the Easy Coal's almost gone, and the company's going to pull out. He turned his head as if to face mine, but saw Mom's beach picture instead. He puzzled over it a moment, if it was the first time that he'd seen it, and then turned back to me. There's more than 50 years of good coal left in that mine. That's not what Mr. DeBonnet said. Dad gripped the edge of the table, as if he were going to get up and come across the kitchen after me. But he subsided. DeBonnet's a union rebel-rouser. I don't want you talking to him anymore. I'm a company man. That makes you a company boy. Do you understand? I understood more than he knew after all. I was the one who had been beaten up by the older boys when the union went out on strike. He didn't know that. I was irritated enough to tell him, but the black phone rang. He rushed past me in the foyer, snatched up the receiver, and yelled at it before whoever had enough time to say a word. I'm coming, damn you! All right, I'm going to pause there and get my throat a rest. That is part 2 on chapter 7.